It is up to each one of us to make the world better. It won't happen by some outside force. It's a responsibility of each one of us to do a little or a lot to make the world a better place for everybody. The thing that brings me joy is to see that I made a difference for somebody.
That was Fabian Bedne. Fabian was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, where he studied architecture at the University of Buenos Aires. He moved to the U.S. as part of a training program in the 1990s that was tied to the Columbus, Ohio area international program that exchanges professionals from one country to another to develop and exchange ideas. That initial opportunity sparked a whole new beginning. He left his home country, which was then under a dictatorship. His story of becoming a U.S. citizen is heartwarming, as are his efforts to encourage others to engage in their home communities. Let's learn how Fabian's parents instilled in him the gift of service and why today he's living true to their legacy. Fabian demonstrates how his life of service has come full circle. As an elected public official and community leader, he has officiated more than 1,600 wedding ceremonies and is now working for the Nashville mayor's office. Let's take a deeper dive to understand why Fabian has used his skills to become a positive influence to others and a valued voice to represent our growing community.
I'm Sally Hussey, the CEO of 50 Forward, and we elected to launch this podcast because we know older adults have such inspiring stories and wisdom worth sharing. We have now all learned that social connections are critical to our well-being. This podcast is made possible by 50 Forward, the leading resource for adults 50 plus in Middle Tennessee who seek to live longer, more fulfilling lives.
You're listening to Squeeze the Day, where we talk to extraordinary people over the age of 50 who are living their best life now. Their stories of a well-lived life are both inspiring and encouraging to all of us as we seek to navigate a meaningful and purpose-driven second chapter in our life. Today's Squeeze the Day is brought to you by the All of Us Research Program from the National Institutes of Health. Learn how you can help change the future of health by participating in the program. Visit www.joinallofus.org to learn more. I'm Susan Sizemore, Communications Director for 50 Forward, so let's get started. Welcome, Fabian. We're excited to share your story.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Will you tell us a bit about your roots?
Oh, I'm a mix of many things. Like on my dad's side, we were from the Ukraine. On my mother's side, we're from Poland. We're Jewish. We have been in Argentina for 100 years, so we are also Hispanic, ethnically speaking. So we're a mixed baggage. But if I had to say where I'm from, I'll say my neighborhood in Buenos Aires. It's called Valvanera, which is the place I grew up.
Very interesting. And that mix brings forth so many interesting components in everyone's life. You lived under a military dictatorship and eventually came to the U.S. What was the driving force for that new beginning?
So the dictatorship, by design, they were trying to make people powerless. You know, they wanted to dominate and control, and that was something that was really hard for me. And I also lost my brother during the dictatorship. They disappeared, my older brother, so I never saw him again. And that was also added to the condition that I felt when the dictatorship ended. And I felt that things were not getting better in terms of empowerment and people feeling more in control. So at some point, some years after the democracy came back, I just decided to take a sabbatical and come to the US for a year to work on architecture, which is my training. I end up staying here.
Let's talk a little bit about, as an immigrant moving to the U.S., where did you land first?
I remember March 1990 landing in New York City. I was there for a day and then I went to Ohio. I lived in Ohio for about 4 or 5 years, worked in a really cool projects. That's the reason why I decided to stay. I was doing community development in a small inner city neighborhood in Columbus, Ohio. And I ended up staying there until we moved to here, to Nashville, Tennessee. And Nashville has been my home ever since.
What actually brought you to Nashville? And at the time you moved here, I bet Nashville was a very different place.
It was a very different place. My wife's father developed Alzheimer's, and her sister lived in Chattanooga. So we decided to come here for a little bit, help to share in taking care of my father-in-law, Ernie. And he stayed with us for a while, and I was very happy that we were able to take care of him. But when he passed away, we just decided to stay. They had become our home. Our daughter was born here, and we just found a community that we could connect with. And then as I was finding this community, I also decided to connect with other Hispanics and immigrants in the city, because as I was feeling more settled in my new home, I also felt that I wanted to help other immigrants and Latinos to help them be successful. When I came here, it was kind of tough on me, as it is for every immigrant, so many changes. And so I wanted to help other immigrants have it easier and help them be successful.
That's really cool. That's really a nice gift that you bring. What year did you become a U.S. citizen, and what was that like?
I don't remember exactly the day that I became a citizen, but it's probably like 20 years ago or something, or even more. But it was funny because I decided to become a citizen. I went to Memphis to start the paperwork, came back to Nashville with my wife. We completed the form, sent all the paperwork with a check. Like a year goes by, and we don't hear from the immigration people. And as an Argentine, I'm always afraid of bureaucracy. So I didn't want to rock the boat or anything. But my wife says, you should send me a letter. So I sent the letter. And they sent me a letter back saying, well, your check was $25 short. And I had paid, they cashed my check, but they never told me that it was short. So here I was waiting for the stuff to go. Anyway, I sent the check, and then my ceremony was on the auditorium downtown, and there were like 1,000 people like me swearing in allegiance to our new home, and it was awesome. I invited some of my coworkers to come with me. They were happy. I mean, people, for the most part, are happy when you become a citizen. I think it was Carl Dean that used to say, immigrants can go anywhere in this country, and when they choose Nashville, they are making a commitment to this place, and they're choosing this place. And it's true. I mean, I think we're lucky when somebody chooses our city to make a life, and we should be thankful for it. So anyway, it's been my home now for over like 25 years, and I love it.
I'm curious a bit about becoming a U.S. citizen and the process, especially because there's a kind of a groundswell right now of people saying how many people who are born in the U.S. never learn or know as much as people who become citizens, and isn't that a shame? So tell us a little bit about kind of the education and the process of becoming a citizen.
We don't really have a very good immigration system. That's why we struggle with people that get stuck in the cracks of the immigration process. For example, there are many amazing immigrants that would love to apply for a visa. Their visa got expired and they're still here in an undocumented status. So we don't really have a good system in place. But for me, I came here with what it was called a J1 visa, which was for training for professionals. Then I was sponsored by my employer, and I got an H1B visa, which is for professionals. There are not many visas like this, like maybe 50,000 a year. And I got that visa. And then this is a funny story. My wife, I had been dating her for 2 years, and she's like, why is this guy not proposing to me? And so I was waiting to get my visa. I didn't want to marry her, and people say that I married her for a green card. So once I got my H-1B visa, I asked her to marry me, and she wanted to kill me because it's like, I didn't want to tell her either, because otherwise she will say, oh, don't worry about it. But I thought it was a gentleman thing to do that. So I got my green card. First, it was a temporary green card. Then I got a permanent green card. And then I applied for citizenship. So all along, it took like 10 years for me to become a citizen. And all the while, you're paying taxes from the moment you put a foot in the U.S., but you don't get to decide how those taxes are going to be spent until you become a citizen and get to vote. So there is a lot of immigrants in this country that for one reason or another are stuck in this immigration limbo. They don't get to influence the process.
Those are very good points. Thank you. One thing I want to ask you about, you're so active in the community and community service, and why is that?
I was raised that way. When I was a kid, my dad and my mom had partnered in creating a Lions Club in Buenos Aires, in Balvanera, in the neighborhood that I grew up. And they were just so into it. They will do scholarships and feed people, and sometimes they will bring us along as they were going to help others. And I just thought that it was the right thing to do. And also, in the Jewish faith, you're supposed to do that. You're supposed to heal the world. It's called Tikkun Olam, and the idea is that it is up to each one of us to make the world better. It won't happen by some outside force. It's a responsibility of each one of us to do a little or a lot to make the world a better place for everybody. And so I was just raised that way, and I really enjoy it. It's the thing that brings me joy is to see that I made a difference for somebody. And it's not because I expect anything back. It's just, I have joy when I see that I did something. It is, even if I don't get a thank you, I like it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I'm messed up like that. Sorry.
No, I think it's interesting. And, as I shared with you a little bit, is when you post on Facebook and share things about your story, or the media covers it, you really start to get more of a snapshot about a person and their heart for community. And that's one of the things that even as you serve the community as a council rep, you also, have had so many first, including you're the first Latino immigrant member of the Metro Council in Nashville, and then now you're a member of Nashville Mayor John Cooper's staff. So I'm curious also what made you initially want to run for office.
I wonder that sometimes. But it was really, in Argentina, it was all about disenfranchisement, right? I remember, the government was trying to take the power away from us. And so I came to the U.S. and I work in a nonprofit in Ohio, helping people, empowering people. And then I got here and I was frustrated because my neighbors were complaining about feeling that their council member wasn't listening and it wasn't really, they were feeling disenfranchised. And I remember thinking I came all the way here, half a planet away, to try to get away from an environment where people don't matter. And this shouldn't happen in America. This is not what this country is about. So I started going to meetings and I will try to advocate for people to be heard. And some people started saying, hey, why don't you run for office? And I was like, me running for office? It had never occurred to me. But slowly I started getting more and more into the idea. And the thing that really got me to do it is people will say, you can never win. You're an immigrant, so you'll never get elected. And I thought, now I have to make a point. So I decided to run just to prove them wrong. And the first time I lost, but I did so well that I felt encouraged to do it again. And the second time I won.
Very interesting. Don't challenge me because I might just take you up on that challenge, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Tell us about helping others and how that's truly part of your DNA. Do you have a story that just something that comes to mind when you think about community service and things you've been able to accomplish?
Well, the problem is I don't like to brag about those things. But I think professionally, for example, when I design a building, I very much want to know what my clients want. And if I can capture what the client wants and then I design something that they feel it expresses what they had in mind, I get a lot of pleasure out of that. But then also in the council, for example, if somebody would reach out to me about an issue they had, I remember advocating for people that were getting evicted or people that were stuck on the cogs of the machine and they needed somebody to help them move forward. Many times, I believe that Nashville government is really good people. There's a lot of good people there. But like in any bureaucracy, sometimes things don't work. And so many Metro Council members, not only me, do that. They try to find ways to take care of issues that some of their constituency will have. But then also, I just like to mentor. If somebody asks me to go to a school and talk to the kids, I'll do it. And the main reason I do that is something my mom told me when I was in high school. She said, the only thing that nobody can take away from you is what you have in your head. You have money and you may lose it, but whatever you learn, whatever skill you learn is going to stay with you. And that proved to be true. In my case, I decided to follow my curiosity. And when I wanted to learn something, I actually went and tried to learn it. And then I was able to do things in my job and find new opportunities because I had done that. So I like to share that with the next generation that they do need to learn what they are taught at school, but also just if they're curious about something, just try to learn it because there may be an opportunity later on that where they can use that skill set.
So advocacy and mentoring are so important, I think, in every community. But I feel like, sometimes that gets maybe pushed aside, and it's so critical, I think, to improving everyone's well-being. I have to ask you about officiating weddings. A rumor has it that you have that you've officiated more weddings than most public officials in our community. And I want you to share a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the third that had done more civil weddings in Nashville. And the other two are the county clerk. So I'm the third. So, but I didn't set up to become the third. I mean, it was just, I think by now I have done probably 1,600 weddings.
Wow.
And it's something it kind of happened by accident. It's somebody I respected a lot that worked with Catholic Charities at the time called me and said, hey, Fabian, you can do civil weddings, right? I said, I think I can. And say, and you speak Spanish, so I need you to come and do a Spanish wedding for this couple. And I said, sure, whatever you say. And so I actually went to the charities and I did this wedding and I liked it. And so then he said, well, can you come next week? I said, sure. So it just became a thing where I would go every week and perform weddings for Latinos that needed somebody to provide that service in Spanish. And then it just became a thing. And so I provide that service to other nonprofits, but now I mostly do it with Hispanic Family Foundation. And every Friday I'll do maybe anywhere between 3 to 5 weddings, one after the other. And it's people that are looking for that ceremony, for that service, that may not be looking for anything fancy, but just do it. And I don't ask them, why, but it's just a wide variety of people, older people, younger people with grandkids that have been together all their lives and they never get married. I just love it. And the thing I like the most is I get to meet so many people. That's another thing that I like. I'm just very curious about the human condition. I just like to learn how people live, what are they doing, what makes them tick. And so when I do these weddings, I get to talk to them a little bit, ask them what they do, a little bit about their family. And I just really enjoy it. So that's how I got to 1,600 weddings.
That's a lot. And somebody who had mentioned that to me said they always knew when you were about to go do it or when you had come back because they said it was just the joy that you demonstrated to your coworkers about marrying people. I think it's really an awesome thing that you're doing. And I had no idea that it started in the Hispanic community due to a special ask. Let's talk a little bit about the Hispanic community specifically and your Hispanic heritage. I know it's very important to you. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about your focused attention to welcoming people in our community and any advice you might have on welcoming newcomers.
Yeah, I think, first of all, if you want to get to know your neighbor, just put all the bias aside because a lot of what you believe was fed by media, by Hollywood, by TV, and it's really probably doesn't represent the people you have next door. Many of the people that are immigrants in Nashville that are working in construction or kitchens or taxi drivers, they may have been a surgeon back home, or they may have been, a lawyer, or they may have been a company owner, and they had to move. I mean, nobody leaves their home and go to another country, just like we see now with people from the Ukraine or Africa. They don't just leave everything behind and leave because they just feel like it. There's usually some reason, religious, politics, sexual orientation. There's many reasons why people are forced to leave. So they make a choice, I'm going to survive and I'm going to make sure my family survives. So they go to a new place, and when they get there, they have to pay the bills. There isn't really a pot of money waiting for them to make it. So they'll take any job that is available because they need to provide for themselves and their family. So just assuming that you know who the person that you're talking to is just by looking at them, it won't be enough. You got to really spend some time trying to talk to them. And most Latinos, according to statistics, speak some level of English. Very few, like I think it's less than 20%, speak zero English. The problem is, like many people, we Latinos, mostly immigrants, we have what is called the imposter syndrome. So we don't feel comfortable speaking in English because we feel like we are not good enough. And so they're going to have a hard time talking to you in English unless you make them feel welcome and comfortable engaging in a conversation. So just get to know your neighbor, be nice, be polite, take your time. It won't happen in one day, it will happen over time. But you're going to probably get to know somebody that is very rich, full of history and culture, and somebody you're going to find very interesting. But you have to make the investment in working with that neighbor, that person, that coworker, and get to know them and make sure they know that you can be trusted.
The two remaining questions are things we ask all of our guests. The first one is, what is one piece of advice your parents or an older adult might have shared with you that at the time you thought was kind of silly, but now it rings true in your everyday life?
Well, what I said before about, what's on your head, what you learn, it's nobody can take away from you. When my mom told me that, I just thought that, what does that mean? But then it proved to be so true to me. When I was in Ohio, I decided I wanted to learn 3D drafting for some reason. I don't know why. And so I started teaching myself how to draw in 3D, in AutoCAD, in computer-aided design. And when I moved to Nashville, I was one of the few people in the city that could do that. And there was no reason why I chose to do that, but it really made a difference in opening a career path for me working on this architectural firm that I end up, after 13 years, I end up being the lead designer. But when I started, that's an unfortunate thing that happens to many immigrants, that our degrees are not recognized and our skill sets are not recognized. So you have to prove yourself harder than a native. But it was really nice that over time I was able to do that. So this is what I tell immigrants. Just learn whatever you're happy about. Just make sure you take the time to learn it. And then stick with one thing. One thing that we immigrants do in our home countries, to be a specialist on something doesn't pay off. You have to be able to do many different things. So for many immigrants, it's very hard to specialize on something because it's counter to the culture of where we come from. So I always tell people, just try to stick to one thing and develop and work on that and make sure people know what you do and, earn people's trust. And then just don't be afraid of learning something new.
It's great advice. So, Fabian, I wonder, what is it that you do to squeeze the day?
I take great joy solving problems. I mean, I think that's why I became an architect. And if I can find a way to solve a problem that nobody thought before, I get a big kick out of it, because when you see the problem solved and you made a difference for other people, it's just something that makes me very happy. And I still like to do that. So when I volunteer, for example, leading crews, I haven't done it for a while, but I led crews repairing homes with Rebuilding Together Nashville. The thing I like the most is when there was an unplanned problem on the construction side, I had to find a way to solve it. And if I could solve it and lead the volunteer and had to do it, then I was like, yes, we made it work. And so that's what I like. I like solving problems. That's my thing.
Well, we're lucky to have a problem solver like you in our community. I want to thank you for joining us today. What an amazing life of leadership we're witnessing from interviews and stories just like yours. Now we challenge everyone listening to go squeeze the day.